are here today at a very exciting event. Thank you, Alexi. We're just putting up the PowerPoint. We're waiting for everybody to join in. While we're here, feel free to put in the chat where you're coming from. What city are you? And what's your year? Another idea that's really fun when we do these events is the three little dots on the upper right-hand side of your little thumbnail picture. You can rename and put your year. Like I'm going to put my year for HBS. So people can see what year you graduated and people can kind of self-identify. So while you're doing that, very excited to host Lucinda Halpern. Thank you so much for being here, Lucinda.
Absolutely. It's my pleasure. I'm so excited.
We have so many people interested in this topic. So many of us have this burning desire to write a book. And this is just such a hot topic. So you could see by how many people are coming today. And Lucinda, forgive me, but I think you would probably be the best person to introduce yourself.
Oh, no
If you
problem.
don't mind,
Not at
helping
all.
people while people are coming in, let's have you just introduce yourself and tell everybody a little
Sure.
bit about your background and what are we going to do today?
Okay, great. Yes, I have. So here's what we'll do. I have a presentation. It's a fun one. It's called The Four Kinds of Writers Who Get Book Deals and How. It is based on the book that I've just published.
Sorry?
I'm sorry?
Over to the youngsters.
Oh, if everybody could please
Cemetery.
mute. No, hold on. I'm not
Also,
quite
Sherry,
sure,
do you want
Alexi.
me admitting people or as I see
No,
them come
no,
in? Okay.
nope. I think you're good.
Okay.
We'll take care of that. And
Okay, great.
all right. I think you're good to go. Welcome, everybody, and handing it over to Lucinda. Thank
Okay,
you.
wonderful. Well, it's so nice to be here. I was just saying that the presentation that I'm giving today, which I am going to make as brief as possible. I'm a very fast talking New Yorker, so you'll have to slow me down if something is unclear. But the idea is that I really want to maximize time getting to know you and answering questions about publishing because it is so mysterious. As a little bit of background, I actually started with a wonderful person. I don't know if she's attending today, but Heather Myers worked with me at Scholastic, which is one of the publishers of J.K. Rowling and Stephanie Meyer. I'm sure you all know it. And Heather had actually recommended that I do this today. She's remained a dear friend. So I started out in corporate publishing, wanting to be a writer, wanting to be an editorial assistant, and then made my way to HarperCollins, made my way to Scholastic. And in my mid 20s, I realized that I just wanted to do a thing where I was helping artists and writers, but actually managing their careers. And I had much more of a business interest along with an editorial one. So I took the only job that was given to me at that age with no list of clients and no revenue to guarantee at Fletcher and Company, which is now part of United Talent Agency. And I learned to be an agent. I actually had the wonderful experience of being a marketing consultant to Gretchen Rubin, Bob Sutton, Chip and Dan Heath. There were a number of authors that Christy, my boss, was kind enough to include me in and let me work for. So that really became such a boot camp for learning online marketing, which fast forward 15 years from then has now dominated the publishing space, right? With the advent of ebooks and also social media. And Gretchen Rubin of the Happiness Project was at the forefront of that. So when I started my own company at the unwise age of 27 years old, I was doing this mix of representing authors and publicizing for them and teaching them about online marketing. Fast forward even more, we started in 2016 at my company, Lucinda Literary, a speakers bureau, where for many of our authors who said, I'm really tired of working with lecture agents, I created this book so that I could get speaking gigs. Why isn't that happening for me? I thought that's something we could probably do because we negotiate deals already. Like, how difficult can that business be to learn? That became really a distinct service of our agency that others don't offer. And it's been a wonderful business to be in for our business authors and PhDs and psychologists. And then in 2020, when the pandemic hit and I wondered where all of publishing was going, I decided to just take a note from my thought leaders and authors who had developed massive sort of online marketing empires and email lists, and we're teachers, we're teaching courses. So even I was Zoom phobic, I was Instagram phobic, video phobic, but I thought I've always wanted to make a mission and educate writers at scale rather than just represent an elite few writers that live in New York City. How can I do this? And I started giving online courses under the rubric of Get Signed. And fast forward even more, I actually used that method that I was teaching that I'd learned from my authors and working with them to get my own book deal. So really meta experience. I'm now coming from the perspective of publishing side, literary agent, and now author. The book that I published in February, which you probably saw in
What's the
any of the
matter?
promotion
Come here.
going. I'm sorry. What? Oh, that might have been someone not muted. But this is the book Get Signed that I publish. You probably see it in the backdrop. And this presentation I'm giving today is an offshoot of one of the most fun sections of that book, which is the 4 kinds of writers who get book deals. If you've read the book, you probably know what type you are. This presentation goes a little bit further to say how you can leverage that strength to get an agent and a book deal. So since we're at 12:10, thank you again for being here. I know something about those of you who have opted in to receive emails from us, so I have a sense of where you are in the process. Thank you for that. I'll give you this brief presentation and I'll make sure that we get enough time to answer your questions. Does that sound good? Does everyone hear me, see me okay? All right, amazing. So I will go ahead and share my screen if I can find, this is the About Lucinda Literary. I was just here a moment ago. All right. Let me try again. Okay, here we go. All right. So if everyone can see my screen, I'm going to bring this up into full screen. Does everyone see that okay? I just gave this recently. Maybe some of you even attended the one. We give regular events at our company now with guest experts, and I did one of these pretty recently. So we've talked about me, enough about that. I guess one thing I didn't say was the types of authors I represent. So we're really known for the last decade in doing practical nonfiction and business books. And by practical nonfiction, I mean not necessarily how to, although that's great, but psychology-driven books, pop science, a sort of research backing to them is really exciting to me. I love working with business people and with PhDs, people who can teach me something about the world, and I teach them something about publishing. And we work with all the major publishers and independents in New York and now elsewhere. So here are the 4 kinds of writers. We call them the everywhereist, the data collector, the ideator, and the crusader. And I'll just go through them briefly. The idea is that you will recognize yourself in at least one of these types. Most writers recognize themselves in 2, even 3. No writer, except one that I've worked with, is all 4. So what I'm trying to do with this presentation is recognize who you are and leverage that strength to land an agent, but also pay attention to what those other types are and how you can channel those talents and those tips that I'll go through to increase your own chances in a competitive market. So the everywhereist is the highly visible author who has a platform, what we call a platform, and demonstrates reach. Platform is a whole other subject I can speak to, but in brief, we define it as audience plus reach. Built-in audience that you already bring visibly. We can go over what that means in a second. And then reach, which is really the amplification power, whether it's through your network or other authors or social media or speaking. It's really, how are you going to sell this book to tens of thousands of people, which is what a publisher or the kinds of publishers we're doing business with are most interested in. So the Everywhereist convinces publishers of their ability to sell books based on the audience they've built. Their strength is visibility. They bring a built-in audience who is already visibly consuming their content. And for those without a large social media following, because I'm sure several of you in this room have heard, well, I'm not a celebrity and I hate Instagram and I don't, do TikTok and I don't have social media. I'm the same way. And I'm trying now to practice what I preach in promoting a book and teaching other authors that social media really is a smart thing to do for selling books. But if you don't have those things, many of you in this room will have a network, or you're already doing speaking events, or you have an email newsletter or a Substack. All of those things can be really important in proving to a publisher that you have the credentials to create a successful book. If you relate to the Everywhereist, you are every agent and publisher's dream right now. This is the dream type. This is what everyone wants. So the Everywhereist greatest challenge, of course, is that visibility is not enough. There are other components in your book package that matter. And in my book, Get Signed, I talk about the 3 keys by which we evaluate material at Lucinda Literary. And I suspect that even if they haven't defined it in quite those terms, my colleagues at other agencies and my publishing colleagues also look for these things, which is what we call big idea, great writing, and an irrefutable platform. The great news is you only need 2 of the 3. So if you are the Everywhereist and you have that platform, now what we really want you to do is focus on your big idea or your great writing. And I'm sure we can answer questions on big idea and what I mean by that. So tip number 1, identifying your big idea is proving that there is something in your story to keep readers engrossed and to warrant a $30 price tag, because believe it or not, that is now the price of a hardcover book, even by a first-time author. You are competing with Netflix. So I don't know about you all, but I love to do a game where I go out with friends and I say, what are you guys reading right now? And some people are like, oh, I'm reading this. And then most people kind of, shy away. And I say, are you reading? Are you reading? And, I'm a mom with young kids. I mean, my friends are listening to podcasts at best. Mainly they're scrolling Instagram or they're scrolling their news feeds. So if you are writing a novel, even a nonfiction book, entertainment value is key. If you're writing a memoir, I would caution you against writing something, this goes for a novel as well, that feels heavy and painful, that feels like we're about to enter something that is not going to be fun and enjoyable. Of course, everyone likes literature that is rich and, has those human themes, but the emphasis that the market is looking for is really on escape and levity, and you have only to look to Netflix and movies to see that that's playing out in real time. So analyze what kind of content your audience most responds to as you speak or post. For nonfiction, what is the problem you're solving for readers? What is the pain and the gain? And again, I have a much more sort of how-to prescriptive format for actually doing this with your own book in Get Signed. But those are sorts of the ways I want you to be thinking. And it just isn't enough to go and post on social media and leave it there. It isn't enough to go do a speaking event, give your keynote and exit. You really need to pay attention to what is the one question people are asking of you? What's the one thing they uniquely want to hear from you? And that is going to be what I ask you in an interview if we have that together and you're writing nonfiction, because that is going to be what your book should answer. And it's really that simple. Don't overthink it. I wanted to be a memoirist and a novelist and a poet, and Heather knows that, my friend who's part of this network. But at the end of the day, what was I best positioned to write a book about? Getting an agent. And that's perfectly fine. And it's a really wonderful creative endeavor. Tip number 3 is consult trained experts such as book coaches, ghostwriters, or literary agents. If you've poked around my site, you know that we offer a lot of consulting services, from on-demand courses to live events to actually meeting with agents and getting their time to talk about your particular project. The Everywhereists that we work with at Lucinda Literary know what they don't know, and they're all about hiring experts to sort of fill in those pieces that they can't do, because Their job, what they've been engaged by a publisher to do, is to beat the drum of their business and keep running it in the day-to-day. So it is not a bad thing at all to be hiring and working with experts. Quick case study of a novelist who's an everywhereist of ours is Jane Allen, who began as a self-published author. And I know many of you will bring questions about self-publishing, and I'm happy to speak to it. But she began as a self-published author when every agent in town rejected her manuscript in 2018. She went on to package this herself. She's got a real entrepreneurial startup mentality. These are not the book covers that she started with, but they're pretty damn close. And she went out on Instagram and offered to speak at every book club that would have her for free. And what they ended up doing was having these wonderful conversations. Of course, everyone bought her book. And by the time she was referred to me with this just incredible show-stopping title, I was like, how quickly can I sign this up? Because I think that there's a big publisher for this. And Janique had to take a real leap of faith with me. She had an offer from Amazon because Amazon saw how well that book was performing. And I said, give me a week. I think we can go to, the major houses in New York. And within 4 days, we had a 4-book deal with HarperCollins, major book deal. She's now publishing this as a standalone novel. So that's really a crowning accomplishment for her, to be doing that with a professional editor for the first time. And that's coming out this December. It's going to be wonderful. So Jane is my terrific everywhereist, film deal in progress, and just enjoying every success that she so deserved. Began this by self-publishing. The data collector, I am guessing that those of you who went to Harvard here may relate to this writer type, which is, and the good news about this writer type is that anyone can be a data collector. This does not involve some inherent strength. It really means that you are willing to do the research. That is demonstrating the success of similar books. That's what we call comps in the industry, so comparative titles is probably the number one thing that I do not want you to exclude in your pitch to agents. I want you to say to agents, here are my comps because I've done my research. The best data collectors tend to be scientists, academics, journalists, or novelists, and they're more comfortable with research than self-promotion. The strength of a data collector knows the market. They research comparative titles to reverse engineer what's selling and why, and they sleuth the best agent through their research. The data collector's greatest greatest challenge is that they struggle to feel confident in the public eye. They may not fully grasp the difference between smart marketing and self-promotion. So what I say here to anyone who is struggling with self-promotion, which is about 60% of writers I know, including myself, is think about if you flip your mindset this way and you realize it's not about you, it's about the value you're delivering to a reader, whether that is the entertainment appeal as a novelist or as a memoirist, or whether that is the prescriptive appeal if you're writing a self-help book or a business book. When you think about the reader, it really removes the pressure of self-promotion. Then it's just about what value can I offer on a daily basis? How can I consistently show up, whether it's a LinkedIn Live or an Instagram Live, where it's just posting on LinkedIn, if that's your comfort zone, if it's writing in your newsletter, that's not self-promotion. It is marketing, but it has a real purpose to it. So I say to data collectors I work with, practice your elevator pitch with your network, make sure everyone in your neighborhood knows it by memory. And this will also help with media. When you go on NPR, when you get into the room with the publisher, they're looking to see how you present to the media. So this sort of practicing orally your elevator pitch is going to go in your written pitch to agents, and it's ultimately going to be your 2-liner that you give in your NPR interview. Tip 2 is lead with originality, novelty, and timeliness. I said earlier, I'm going to tell you what a big idea is. Those are the points. Originality, novelty, and timeliness. Of course, this is the whole first chapter of Get Signed, which I recommend you read, because whether you're writing fiction or nonfiction, every publisher is looking for a big idea. And when I was asked this the other day, well, what's the first thing that strikes your attention, Lucinda, when you read a query letter by an author you don't know? I think I can safely say that me and my editor colleagues and agents are looking for that idea. Then we're sort of checking the box of, is there a great platform if you're a nonfiction writer, or is there great writing if you're a fiction or memoirist? So I think that idea piece is really important, and focus on the new and different when you consider that idea. Find inventive ways to access agents beyond the slush pile. I'll give you this case study now. Ron Friedman, I have his book right here. He's the author of 2 books, and he published one that was represented by another agent. He's the quintessential data collector. We actually have another business together. We're closest friends. I do all of his speaking engagements. We're very intricately entwined years later. But he is a PhD who just what he did to find an agent was he is well read across like every category, so novels to science to everything else, and he found a list of agents in the acknowledgments to those books, and he created a spreadsheet and saw how many times they recurred. So he discovered my name through the acknowledgments of another author and contacted me. But he didn't just do that. He also, because he has a network, made 2 calls to different people who knew me. And they called me while I was on maternity leave, and they said, "You've got to meet with Ron Freeman." I said, "I'm not taking on another client. I'm, nursing a baby. I'm up all night and I'm not doing it." And they said, "Well, he's on a plane to New York." And I said, "Okay." Or rather, he's booked his ticket. He's getting on a plane tomorrow. And we met. And what was so amazing about Ron is that he presented me with his proposal in person, and I fell in love with it. And I thought, how did publishers pass on this, right? So he was working with this former agent. I saw such potential. We actually repackaged it into what seemed to be an entirely different book. And we sold it at auction. And the publishers who showed up for this bidding war were 3 of them had actually passed on it in its earlier iteration. So this is not to credit me. This is to credit Ron. He was able to take feedback. He was able to make it different. And not only that, we actually sold it into 2 books because Ron, like so many ambitious executives, actually had many more books in him than just one. And we had to slice and dice it, but we were able to monetize, we were able to get twice as much by selling 2 different books. So that's Ron. I'm sure some of you are data collectors, and I'd love to hear when we go into the Q&A piece, what sort of writer you relate to. So the third type is the ideator, and the ideator, much like its title, demonstrates a powerful and unique concept. They convince publishers they have the ability to sell books by positioning their book as a true game changer. This goes back to the new and the different. The strength of the ideator is contagious creativity. They're collaborative, they can pivot quickly, given a new trend in the marketplace or an agent's feedback. So they're the authors I love to work with who they have a big idea, but they're sort of looking for how they can make it timely. And that is a real talent, and it's definitely needed because agents and publishers in that publishing is really about, you might sell your proposal and the book could be on shelves in 3 years. It really is like very long lead time. We need to all be thinking like futurists. What's going to be exciting at the time of release and what's going to be still exciting 5 years after that. The ideator's greatest challenge is a creative idea alone isn't enough. You have to get in touch with your inner data collector and channel the talents of the everywhereist. So tips could be think through your greatest ideas and determine whether you're best positioned to write them, pivot your idea or enhance your platform as needed to make the case. Reverse engineer Amazon descriptions that are similar to yours and apply these insights in your pitch, and identify your unique content and again, road test it with your audience. Test it out, see what responses, see what facial expressions, see what comments you get on social media. But I want to emphasize this quality of reverse engineering because a lot of people get really stumped on the guideline. If you're out there querying agents or you plan to, people get stumped on the guidelines of what they should do. I have 300 words in my query letter. They ask for 250. They say they represent this genre. They don't recommend another. Should I use this word count or should I use another? And I'm like, I want to wrangle these folks and say, you're thinking about the wrong things. Look at an Amazon description of a book that is similar to yours or inspired yours. See what they do. The elevator pitch is there. The hook is pretty prominently up there in bold. If for a novel, it's often like, what's this, sort of high stakes question or decision that the character is going to make. For prescriptive authors, it's more like, what's the problem we're going to solve or what are we going to learn? And if you use this tried and proven framework of an Amazon description, that can be your pitch letter and still get attention, right? We're not going to turn you away because you didn't, like, you flubbed a particular rule of our query guidelines. We're going to ask you if we want more information, and the best thing you can do is hook us. It's like in the news industry, it's all about the headlines, right? So tip 3 is identify your unique content, road test it with your audience. We've talked about that a little bit. Here's our case study of the ideator, Kyle Austin Young. Young guy, consultant, not a speaker, no social media presence, doesn't have a huge email list, based out in Nashville, Tennessee. So none of the typical credentials that you would think would get him a 6-figure book deal for a business book. However, Kyle is the ideator. He has great ideas. He pays attention to the market. He pivots with trends. He created this just great concept of success as a numbers game, and he developed kind of a fresh framework for creating success diagrams as a mode to decision making. And what he did in terms of enhancing his platform is he really focused on being a writer first and foremost. And he pitched himself to Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, and all the rest until he started to actually accumulate bylines in those publications, which then allowed me to go to publishers and say, he's a writer, look and see. He's been featured in all of these places. So that sort of compensated for the lacking social media numbers and email list. But that alone would not have been enough without the big idea. Last type, the crusader. You can guess what type I am, and many agents are. Crusaders demonstrate commitment and resolve. They convince agents and publishers they have the ability to sell books by pursuing their publishing goals fearlessly, and their undying commitment is the reason they will succeed. The strength of a crusader is never seeing the doors closed. You know, as competitive and determined people, entrepreneurs and gifted marketers, they're actually often motivated by rejection. They feel like they can learn something from it. I say to writers who have been rejected 20 times over, what have you learned? What's the feedback you've received? How have you recalibrated? Rejection from an agent is a gift. You know, rejection from a publisher is a gift because they've now taken the time to read and respond. If they haven't given you meaningful feedback, there are ways that I recommend in my book Get Signed to elicit that feedback, right? You never want to just like leave it on the table. You want to find out why someone rejected your work. The greatest challenge is determination helps, but don't neglect to do your research and look to build your platform. Tips are understand the competition and why they've succeeded. And again, crusaders often have trouble doing the research because they're so passionate about their idea that they're not actually sure that it's as new and different as that an agent might be interviewing them to sort of poke and see if it is. And sort of the, you know, again, because many of you work in business, I'm assuming, you know, the worst, or rather the most recurring example of this is the business person who's been told by everyone who works for them, you've got to write a book, you've got to write a book. And what they're really writing is a memoir. So that's the first problem we see all the time. But in addition to that, if they are writing something that is practical and self-help oriented, it might have been said before by about 5 or more people, maybe 50 people who have had bigger platforms than they have. So that bestseller may already exist. And when they come into the room with an agent, if they're presenting an idea that isn't fresh, it's kind of going to, you know, be dead in the water. So another tip for the crusader is to pick 1 or 3 outlets to be present on, repurpose content to maximize exposure and time efficiency. Just at lunch yesterday, I was advising an author on marketing for her book launch, and I said, what you need to be doing in your next event is have someone film you and then slice and dice those video clips and put them out on social media and put them on YouTube, tagging the person that you're in conversation with who has a bigger platform than you do as a way of enhancing your street cred, your recognition, your platform. And what did that take you in terms of your time efficiency? You were already giving the event. So now you've actually sliced and diced, this is the word I always use, like 7 different ways so that you're not creating all of this content when all you want to be is a writer, and you're having the content you're already producing do the work for you. Tip 3 is ensure your book begins and ends with your reader and your service to them. Again, this is a way to sort of think about it, beginning, middle, and end. Your query letter, your book, your promotion, all needs to be geared toward that reader, not about what you want to say. This is like the common mistake of the job applicant who says, at least in my company, I'm passionate about books. I love reading. And I'm like, great. What are you going to offer to the company that someone else can't, right? So that's what you're trying to do in your letter. It's the win-win for an agent. It's what you're going to be doing for them. And in your proposal and book, it's very much the same. The first question you will be asked if you get an interview with a publisher is, who's the reader for your book? Little case study, and then we're ending this so I can give answers to your questions, just as many as I can answer. This is a story that's featured in Get Signed, but I love to tell it over and over again. Tracy McCubbin was a decluttering expert. She's a successful entrepreneur based in LA. She wanted to write a book that would sit on the shelf with Marie Kondo and Peter Walsh. And in her pitch letter, which was terrific, she said, they're not American. America has a real clutter issue, consumption issue, spending issue, hoarding issue. I'm the American who can speak to that. I actually have a personal history. Someone in my family is a hoarder. That's what the inspiration for my book. She wrote this really wonderful pitch letter. And then as the data collector, she, like Ron Friedman's approach, she got a film agent in Hollywood that I do business with because she's based in LA and that's sort of her world, to contact me and pitch Tracy for her, right? In addition to sending me her note. So you want to be creative about ways you get to an agent. One of my mentors always said, like, get in through the side door, not the front door. And I think that will be very, that may again, all of you in this room are savvy and sophisticated and probably know that you can't just try once, right? You've got to try these different modes. So she did her research. She crusaded to get an agent. I got, to speaking with her on the phone. I said, I love your idea and you're so charming, but you don't have the platform to create a decluttering book, right? You don't have zillions of social media followers. And she said, okay. And the next day she wrote me an email and she said, I'm flying to New York to meet with agents and I'd love for you to be one of those interviews. And I was like, what? A, didn't I tell her I wasn't interested in this? That I was torn, but that fundamentally I couldn't take the book on. And B, why is she talking to other agents? I thought I was the only agent she was in conversation with. Well, wasn't a lie, right? You can't lie in this business at all because it's too small. She came into New York. She had, these interviews lined up. We met for an hour. She was so convincing in how much she knew her audience, her reader, her potential, that at the end of that meeting, she said, great, I'll be back to you with the decision by the end of the week. And I'm like, oh my God, this woman is closing me. It is too unbelievable. So the question becomes for an agent is, we know she's going to succeed. Is she going to succeed with me or with someone else? And fast forward, her books are really doing so well. They're earning royalties and she's got hundreds of thousands of followers on TikTok and Instagram. And the publishers who passed on her project for reasons and the agents who passed on her project for reason of her platform are sort of kicking themselves as to why they didn't get into business with her. So I'm very honored to be working with her. Okay. 4 kinds of writers. Which type are you? Everywhereist, data collector, ideator, or crusader. Again, you can be several of these types. You're probably not going to be all of them. Use this to lead your pitch to agents. It's incredibly important that you lead with those strengths. And it's the same thing that we do as agents, right? We always know what weaknesses there are. We need to compensate for those weaknesses with strengths. So as we move to the Q&A section, if you'd like to tell me what type you are, I'm always really interested to hear it. It might inform, how I give you advice. And also please tell me what genre you're working in, because the rules tend to be different for each of, if you're writing fiction or nonfiction. So are you confidential in your type? And now it's time to find your dream agent. I am going to quickly share with you, these are some books I've worked on or our agency has worked on. Again, we do offer these services at my agency where you actually get to meet with an agent and coach with agents at my company, including me, where we will go over your pitch letter on the screen, or we'll talk about building your platform, or we'll talk about your big idea. That's often a conversation we have. Again, mainly every writer that I've met with comes with an idea that is too small, and I want to blow it out of the park and make it a real category killer, as we call it in publishing. That's what publishers are looking for. So we do offer an array of coaching services, and it's pretty, yeah, sorry, someone's laughing. So anyway, yeah, so these are the sorts of things we do. You can go and check out the URL. If you're on our email list, you'll also be getting information. You'll be getting our free author toolkit. If you are at the stage where you feel you've got two of these three keys, meaning you've got the great writing, the book proposal is done, the big idea is as big as it can be, your platform is as, large as you can make it. Now you're ready to query agents, right? So it may be that you come out of this session today and go right to our submissions page and query us. Of course, you're not beholden to query us at all, but the idea of the book and this presentation is I am trying to give you what all of my colleagues look for. Even if you go to our website, it's getsignedbook.com/bonuses. If you've bought the book, you actually get access to 16 interviews with, top publishers and agents and best-selling authors, and they tell you what they look for in first-time authors, which is a different language for talking about what I'm talking about in the book. So, don't just take my word for it. This is what all of us look for in publishing today. It's a very competitive market. I really believe that there are ways to break through if you understand the rules. I hope you've gotten some of that from the presentation. If you feel like you could benefit from this sort of one-to-one coaching with an agent, that is something we offer. And I'm going to stop my share. Oh, I'm sorry, one more thing. Follow us on social. I'd be remiss not to say that, and not for my own self-promotional needs, but because on LinkedIn, where I'm very devoted, and on Instagram, where I'm trying to be better, I'm offering these lives every week, and I'm talking with more and more writers, sort of answering questions that come up as they go and querying and building their platforms. On LinkedIn, I post all my own content. So, trying to sort of have a conversation with a writer or publisher and immediately share the playbook with you of what I've learned in the trenches and what I'm learning every day as an author. So on that note, I will stop share and
It's downstairs.
and go ahead and ask me questions. I think I sort of see faces, so you can do anything you want. I don't know if Alexi or someone else is going to be helping with questions, but you can drop them in the chat and I'll look at them. I see questions have already been asked. So yeah, so let me start with some of these questions, and then if any come up for you, I am here. In that it's a large group and I'll do the best I can. So do you want me admitting? Okay, Bangalore. It's amazing, first of all, that we have so many international folks, and what this has been, the pandemic has been wonderful in my taking consultations with writers all over the globe. I will say to those who are writers joining us from abroad that if you're pitching American agents, it's one of the most important things I'd advise you to do in your book proposal and your pitch is to demonstrate your American audience.
You've got mail.
Can everyone just mute, because it's just distracting I just feel like I'm hearing a question. So anyway, if you are based abroad in India and Paris, I saw people, again, talking about your demographic, like why this would reach an American audience, how you're already connecting with American audiences. Are you speaking in America? Are you on social media and know what those, what that demographic looks like? That's just so incredibly important for us to consider you. It's going to be the question that we ask first. Okay, will the presentation be shared after the webinar? Yes, surely it will. I believe our friends who are running this event are going to do that, but if you've gone to our website, and we can be in touch with you about that as well. I'm seeing some very nice comments. Thank you. Do I only handle nonfiction? I do not. I love doing fiction, and I'm editing 2 novels right now that I'm going to go out on submission with. Jane Allen, as I gave you that case study, she's probably our most successful fiction author of the moment. We also represent Nikki Krause, who did Nanny Diaries. We came on board after that success, but she's done many books since. So we love fiction. And I'm not the only agent at my firm, by the way. There's another agent who really specializes in it. But love fiction, very tough, right? Very tough to break in as a new writer, which is why I hope that you'll consider all that you've learned today and know that for fiction, it is really about the writing on the page, right? So don't blow your mind and get freaked out. You don't have the social media numbers. That's a nice to have for fiction. It's not a need to have. What you need to have for fiction is a really great story and really great writing. And keep in mind that agents are reading fiction for the screen. You know, if it isn't moving at the pace of a movie, if we're not seeing cinematic value, if we're not seeing scene by scene, it's problematic because the greatest sort of long tail in your novel is going to be its film potential. Okay. Thoughts on Amazon KDP. So Margaret, you know, I have nothing but wonderful things to say about self-publishing. It is the path for many authors today. It's the path that many of my authors took before they signed on with agents. And why is that? To prove that they had an audience for their book, much like the Jane Allen case study. But even recently, I've done 2 deals, major deals with Penguin Random House for self-published authors because they built such an audience for their work that publishers actually came after them and said, how can we, you know, how can we participate in this success and what's the new idea? So self-publishing is a wonderful thing to do. KDP is not the only player out there. I have other recommendations that can really, you know, that I think do a beautiful job. The difference with self-publishing, besides the fact that you sort of have to run it like a startup and be prepared to, if you want to be successful in it, kind of make it a full-time job, not that traditional publishing is very much different, is that you don't have the distribution channels that a traditional, you know, brick and mortar house does. So that's the tricky thing. You can pay for the distribution, but even then, you're not going to get in with Barnes and Noble and all the local bookstores in the way you might with a traditional publisher. Guess what? That's not a terrible thing because so many people listen, you know, they buy the ebook and they listen to the audiobook. So I really, again, for many projects, think self-publishing is a great way to go. All of these rules that I've taught today still apply. And I'm sorry to call them rules because for me, they're more fun than rules. But all of this still applies, right? You need the big idea. You need to be new and different to readers to break through. You need the engrossing writing. You really should always be concentrating on building your readership. That's the only way people are going to find out about you beyond your immediate network. Expanding my platform. I have a novel coming out in the fall with, this is from Allie, a gripping modern tale of resilience against extraordinary odds, genocide, and war. Looks like you've got your elevator pitch down, Allie. That's great. A marketing team, millions of people that will, you know, the book will be exposed to millions of people. After that, I believe I'll look for an agent as it's movie material. Thank you again. Allie, appreciate your pitch. That sounds amazing. It sounds like you're really well set up to succeed. And you know, again, if I can encourage you to sort of like watch your sales performance and figure out what's working, a lot of self-published authors come to, like, I get in conversation and I say, what are your sales numbers? And they don't know. And I'm like, guys, this is like the very question you have to be expecting. You know, this is our first question as an agent. And if the sales are modest, that's okay. But think like a business person, like what's going to be your response? Is it that your new idea is so much bigger? Is it that your audience has grown? Is it that the time you published your novel was during the pandemic? I mean, there are a lot of reasons for why a novel might not have succeeded. I queried you a year ago. I did not hear back. That perhaps not, this is Christine, is not as interesting to your agency as business books. Christine, I assure you that's not the case. I do love business books myself, and I do love working with PhDs. That's sort of my, you know, CEOs, entrepreneurs, sort of big teams, speakers. That's my particular specialty, but we have other agents at my firm who are taking on, growing their pipelines, you know, taking on new authors. So do not just think of us for business. If you queried us a year ago, you probably hadn't read Get Signed at that point. I sort of think it's required reading for everyone who submits to us because this is a job application. I'm not sure why. You know, I think that this is the best tool that I can give writers in knowing how we think at Lucinda Literary and as agents generally. So hopefully that will be helpful to you and that we have other agents who are, you know, responsive to your pitch. And it may just be that you need more support and guidance in the areas of platform or writing or big idea. Okay, how much of the book should be written before reaching out to agents? Yeah, we get this question a lot. So all you need for nonfiction is a book proposal. That's the good news and the bad news. Nonfiction, you know, book proposal is no small thing. There are collaborators, ghostwriters, editors who do that as a, you know, for a living. And I would say that 95% of our expert, nonfiction authors do hire people to complete those book proposals and to help them with the book. The book proposal, we have a whole course on this, and I do coaching on this. It's not totally the nature of today's topic. It's a whole other thing, but it's sort of a marketing document for why, not what your book is about, but why it's going to succeed, who you are, what your credentials are to write it, especially in self-help. So you do not need to have written the manuscript. In fact, please don't write the manuscript before you get an agent and a publisher if you are going down the traditional route, because we want to be able to shape that with you. But again, you need to be striking the chords that give publishers a vision for how your book is going to be successful. Publishers are like the nice versions of venture capitalists, right? We want to take a bet on a proven thing to the extent it can be proven. Do you recommend having a manuscript before you pitch? Yes, that's a question I just answered. For a novelist, if you're a novelist, Brooke, it is different. For a novelist, you have to have the full manuscript written. For a memoirist, if any of you are writing your life story, this is a murkier area. There are agencies like ours that want to consider just the book proposal, and there are agencies that want to consider the full memoir. Memoir is really evaluated much in the same way fiction is. It can be a touch tougher because platform does actually play into how memoir is evaluated as well. If you've read a memoir recently and they didn't have a platform of social media followers, they probably were already writers at the New Yorker or wherever, right? It's very few and far between that someone comes out with this incredible life story and wasn't already a writer and also doesn't have the sort of public recognition, right? So we're skeptical people. That doesn't mean that if your writing isn't phenomenal and your memoir reads like fiction and it has that sort of escapist cinematic appeal we were talking about, that we shouldn't see it. But that's a long way of answering. Novels require a manuscript to be written. Nonfiction requires just a book proposal to be written. Is the submission for a new writer typically a first draft of the complete book or more of a synopsis? So Heidi, again, maybe I've answered this now. The submission is the query letter as well as the book proposal or the manuscript. Some agencies will also ask for a synopsis. Something we'll do if we're interested in a pitch is we'll ask for a synopsis, or we'll ask for an outline, or we'll ask for like a sort of list of characters. Again, because we are virtually slushed with submissions and we're, every agency and publisher is, we want to we want to warm up to reading your book. We want to sort of do the due diligence of you answering a lot of questions for us first. And I think that makes total sense. But that is what it looks like. You need your pitch letter. The book gives you the full method to do it. And then you need your complete book if you're writing a novel, or your book proposal. At what stage are we approaching an agent? At ideation? So again, if you're querying us, if you're going to our submissions portal or you're going to anyone else's submissions portal, you've got to have a great idea. You've got to have a book proposal if you're writing nonfiction that you're really proud of. If you're writing fiction, the writing better be really great. And hopefully you've hired an editor, if you've engaged an editor friend to edit that for you. So you've got to be pretty advanced in the process. An agent like me, again, risk of being a broken record. I think that if you're just at the ideation stage, you're much better suited to our education academy, where we're meeting with you to talk about like what your big idea is before you go so far down the path of time and, thousands of dollars of investment on the wrong idea without talking to an agent about what it might be. I'd say I'm a blend. Thank you, Christine. You're telling me what type you are. Ideator and Crusader. That's also a pairing that I love to represent, and is also my own type. I've had many agents say the idea in writing is fantastic. Few say essay collections are challenging to sell, or they want me to have a larger platform. Mine is growing since the launch of Substack in late 2022. Christine, I'd say fantastic that you're on your way to building your platform. It is important. I don't know if your essays, I'm presuming they're nonfiction. So yes, the more public recognition, the better to work with an agent. If they say the writing is fantastic, that's a great sign. And essay collections have like ebbed and flowed. I mean, it's funny. I mean, this past year, I've heard people are, we don't sell, we've sold like maybe one essay collection in the last year. I hear tell that that editors are interested. It's usually the case has been that they want to see a full novel. And I hope that's helpful. I would say that if agents have given you that feedback, good for you, because that's a win. You've gotten their attention, you've gotten response, and you're on your way to building your platform. So we have talked about how much of the finished product you need. What's a modest sales number for nonfiction versus meaningful? So, Margaret, if you have self-published a book, or if you're just sort of thinking about benchmarks to aim for, um, again, big five publishers looking for different thing than independent publishers. So I would say that if you are hovering around the 10,000 copies sold or more, you might now be a fit for a traditional publisher. Again, these are always bespoke. They're custom to the book, custom to the timing, the topic, what your platform looked like then. Many self-published books only sell, 1,000 copies or a couple thousand copies. I would say that something to really be looking for is your number of Amazon reviews. When we're reviewing queries and we see that someone is self-published and we see that they have 20 Amazon reviews, is not a great sign that the book is performed or that it's like found the readership that we would want to take, because agents work speculatively, right? So to take our time developing something if we're not sure there's going to be a sale at the end of the day based on that readership. Do I read all proposals queries? Specifically, you mentioned getting in the side door, online submission, applying to jobs where the probability is low. I mean, Victoria, that's a great analogy, and I use it all the time. It is like a job application. It's like going to human resources and blind querying for a job is very much the same as blind querying an agent. So, the way to get around that, if you don't have a friend who has an agent that you can talk to, or you're not going to some sort of event meeting with an agent, is to actually personalize your letter to say, "Dear David," my husband is a literary agent. "Dear David, I absolutely love Peter Heller's novels, and I, was so inspired by them for this new book. And congratulations on your recent deal or your recent success in X." It's like that extra level of personalization shows people love flattery, but also that you've done your research, that you're a fit for that person. So that would be one sort of approach that I always recommend for a query letter, is don't let it feel like a form letter. How do you define sufficient reach? What level of LinkedIn, other social media, KPIs, blog followership? So, Nikita, it is going to, maybe you could type in what genre you're writing in. If it's self-help, expert, what we call expert-driven nonfiction, we're looking for a certain threshold, yes. And I do give some of those numbers and get signed. Of course, they're always evolving. So to give you an example, we recently sold a book to an imprint of Random House for 6 figures, where she had a $30,000 following on Instagram. And many publishers said, "This isn't enough." And I said, "Well, she's writing about a taboo topic and she's a psychologist. So by nature of her profession, she has to be private. I think it's a pretty damn good following she's built in a few years." But that's because I'm like a crusader, right? I'm an advocate and fighter for my clients. One publisher at Random House, very notable, has done a lot of bestsellers, was like, "Wow, what a fantastic platform she's built." So this is to give you a sense of, it does vary, but I would say that you really want to be, again, over the 10,000 range on a particular platform. Keep in mind that we are looking at an array of things. When we are interested in your idea, we're Googling you. If we see no Google footprint whatsoever, bad sign. Then you have no public recognition. If we go to Instagram and we see that you have a modest following, but you've told us in your pitch that you've got an email list of 50,000 people, right? That's not evident when we Google you. So that's the kind of information I want to know. Likewise, are you on the speaking circuit? Are you giving 30 events a year, being paid to speak? Are those audiences for your keynotes 200 in a room? Well, then, and a publisher's, running the cash register. Okay, well, that's 50 books we could sell per event, or 200 books we could sell per event. Like, that's a bet I would want to take. We're not seeing that through Googling you or finding you on social media. So, again, I give ways in the book that you should really think about, like, unveiling these things to us in a first conversation, so we're not doing the guesswork. So Nikita, again, we do offer those numbers exactly and get signed, and I've contextualized that with an illustration. There's no hard and fast number, but I would say that think about it as tens of thousands on a particular platform. And again, that's for a major publishing deal, depending on your genre, depending on your credentials. Plenty of people who are PhDs don't have that social media following and get book deals and have very successful books. Certainly novelists without any social media following at all. I mean, we're at the top of the hour, but if anyone has any more questions, I never want to leave you hanging. And again, we'll follow up with you because there are these other ways to sort of continue the conversation. But if there are any other questions I can answer now, please let me know. Okay, Shirley has a big one. Thank you for the insightful framework. A non-fictional neuropsychological readership book. Yay, that's totally my thing. What's your advice for people who are not shy of the stage but dislike the drain of social media? So you're the data collector. I think that an email list is a great forum to experiment with because it is proven, as you now have a captive readership who loves your content. They've opted in to receive it. It's not as transient as social media. It's not sort of like dependent on the news cycle. That is a great way to prove to a publisher. That's the proof of concept. Another way would be the speaking. Another way, because you do like the camera, I think you've said, would be to hire a publicist and get placed in the media. Would be to write op-eds and then have publishers coming to you. So there's so many different ways to be creative and to think about platform, and that's kind of what I want writers to be encouraged by. It's not all about celebrity and social media, but I don't want to underemphasize social media. And I'll just say, based on personal experience, I've got a tiny platform. Like, I think we're maybe now 2,000 on Instagram, and I don't know, hovering about around that at LinkedIn. That has taken blood, sweat, and tears and time to build. But here's the thing that I was able to say to a publisher who gave me a book deal was, I've had hundreds of writers that I've taught. They've paid for courses and paid for my time. They've found value because here are all the testimonials. And I've been able to like teach to the test. I know exactly what they need to find out. I'm delivering it in this book. That was sort of the ideator, crusader, data collector, right? I wasn't the everywhereist at all by any stretch. And then you use your network. Many of you here, who, if you're here today, you have a great network, right? So you can probably find your way to an agent. You can talk to people who have published books and say, will you give me an endorsement for this book proposal I'm sending out? I mean, this is something we recommend all the time, which is sort of revelatory to new writers. You don't wait until that book contract to ask your friends to give you a book endorsement. I just took on a client who John Stewart is like his best friend, and we were all connected in email, and John's like, let me know what I need to do. Well, that's now my biggest selling point to a publisher, right? So do not underestimate your network and how important that is as a part of your platform. Do not underestimate your credentials. So there are all these different pieces.
Lucinda,
Yeah.
I'm just popping in because we're at the top of the
Okay.
hour already. It came so quickly. And I just know that everybody here is so engaged in such an incredible topic, and your expertise is so valued.
Thank
Did
you.
I hear that you are willing to stay on a little bit longer if anyone wants to ask you any more
I
questions, or because we
I
can
would
do that
be
if anybody
thrilled.
wants that.
Yeah, I don't know if we have more questions.
I don't know either, but just thought I'd offer that. And for those of you that have to go, please, thank you for joining us. And just want to also give a quick plug, HBS Women Association. We're having a launch party on June 12th. Check out the website, our website, hbswa.org, and go to the events. And on June 12th at 5 o'clock, we're having a big launch celebration. So we'd love to have you all there. And then Lucinda is here for a few more minutes if anyone has
Yeah,
any specific questions.
I might have covered it because I'm getting
You
nice.
might have covered everything.
But I would say if you've read the book, two things. I mean, go over to the Get Signed book site so you can get the bonuses, which are the videos and all of these things we put together, like a workbook companion. Launching a book is no small day job. leave an Amazon review. That's the most important thing you can do to any author you are supporting, you know, not just me, but to any author that you're friends with. It's like people say, yeah, sure, I'll write a review. It's actually a lot of work to get to the screen and write a review. So that's the kindest thing that you can do. And again, there are ways to meet with agents and with me through our website if you go there. So yeah, we can continue this conversation, and I'd really love to, and to hear about your particular projects. So thank you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Lucinda. You have been terrific. And does everyone have a way to reach out to you if they need to? Did you
Yeah.
put your LinkedIn or?
I wouldn't recommend that because I'm
Okay.
absolutely terrible. But what I think we're going to do is send you all a link for any
Oh,
follow-up.
perfect.
Yeah, so we'll
Yeah, and
we'll
then
we'll
we
make
can
sure you
send
have
that.
we'll make sure that you have a link to reach us.
All righty. Well, with that, I'm going to say thank you so, so much, Lucinda. You can see everybody's just raving about your
Oh, thank
presentation.
you.
So
Appreciate
really appreciate
it.
it.
Wonderful.
All
Thank you
right,
so much. See you soon, I hope.
everyone. Thank you. It's so great to have you and have a great afternoon, everyone.
Bye.
Bye for now.